We are obsessed with conspiracies. We look for the Illuminati in music videos. We hunt for the deep state in forum threads. But while you are looking for ghosts, you are missing the monsters standing right in front of you. The most successful conspiracy in human history wasn't hidden. It didn't meet in a dungeon. It had offices, letterheads, and paid taxes. In 1870, 3 men looked at a map of the world. They didn't see nations. They didn't see cultures. They saw a market of 1.5 billion minds waiting to be programmed. They signed a document known as the Ring Combination. With one signature, they privatized reality. For the next 80 years, they decided what was true. If they said a revolution in Brazil was a communist uprising, Wall Street panicked. If they said it was a restoration of order, Wall Street invested. They could turn a riot into a war and a massacre into silence, simply by editing a telegram. You think you know history? You don't. You know the press release issued by The Ring. This is not a story about journalism. This is a forensic investigation into the moment. Truthful information became a luxury product, and how 3 corporate entities enslaved the perception of the entire planet. To understand the scale of this monopoly, we must purge the romantic image of the 19th century journalist. Forget the man with the notebook. Look at the man with the ledger. Paris, 1835. Charles Louis Havas is not a young idealist. He is a failed banker. He has gone bankrupt, lost his fortune in the import trade, and is looking for a way to survive. He realizes something profound. Information is just another commodity, like cotton or spices. But unlike spices, it rots instantly. Havas sets up a shop translating foreign newspapers for the French government and wealthy merchants. He turns news into intelligence. He becomes so essential that the French state begins to subsidize him. He isn't a reporter. He is an extension of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Working in Havas's office is a young German clerk named Paul Julius Reuter. Reuter watches Havas. He learns the trade. And then he steals the model. Reuter moves to Aachen, Germany in 1850. He spots a flaw in the system. The telegraph line from Berlin ends in Aachen. The line from Paris ends in Brussels. Between them lies a 76-mile blind spot. Financial data hits that gap and dies. It has to be carried by horses, losing hours of value. Reuter doesn't look at the sky and see birds. He sees data packets. He hires pigeon breeders not out of whimsy, but out of mathematical necessity. A pigeon flies at 60 kilometers per hour. A train struggles to hit 40. Reuter creates a synchronized network. His agents in Brussels wrap stock prices in oilskin bags, attach them to the bird's legs, and release them. In Aachen, catchers grab the birds, decode the messages, and telegraph them to Berlin. This wasn't a quaint experiment. This was high-frequency trading in the 19th century. Reuter destroyed the competition because he was faster. Bankers in Berlin paid him extortionate fees because the alternative was financial blindness. But across the border, a third player emerged. Bernhard Wolff, a physician's son with close ties to the Prussian aristocracy, founded the Wolff's Telegraphische Bureau. By 1858, the underwater cables were laid. The gap was closed. The pigeons were retired. The telegraph connected London, Paris, and Berlin instantly. And this is where the crisis hit. Reuter, Havas, and Wolff realized that the telegraph was a double-edged sword. It was instant, but it was astronomically expensive. Laying a single mile of undersea cable cost the equivalent of millions of dollars today. To send a single dispatch from New York to London cost a reporter a month's salary. If they competed against each other, if Reuter sent a reporter to Vienna and Havas sent a reporter to Vienna, they would duplicate costs and split the profits. They would bleed each other dry in a price war. The logic of the predator kicked in. Why compete when you can collude? They didn't stumble into an agreement. They negotiated a partition treaty. On January 17, 1870, the heads of the three agencies met. The atmosphere wasn't one of journalistic integrity. It was the atmosphere of a cartel meeting dividing drug territory. The Agency Alliance Treaty, or the Ring Combination, was signed. It was brutal in its simplicity. Havas took the Latin world. France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and the chaotic, resource-rich continent of South America. Wolff took the Teutonic and Slavic sphere, Germany, Austria, Scandinavia, and the Russian Empire. Reuters took the crown jewels, the British Empire, North America, and the Far East. They agreed to swap news exclusively. Reuters would not send a reporter to Rome. He would simply reprint the Havas telegram. Havas would not send a reporter to Berlin. He would reprint Wolff. This created a terrifying filter. Consider the implications. If you were a London merchant investing in Brazilian rubber, your entire understanding of Brazil came from Havas in Paris. Havas was heavily subsidized by the French government. Do you think Havas would report that a French-backed dictator in Brazil was failing? Of course not. They sanitized the news before selling it to Reuters, who sold it to you. Why were they untouchable? Why didn't the governments break them up? Because the governments were the silent partners. Napoleon III protected Havas. Otto von Bismarck protected Wolff. The British Crown protected Reuters. The agencies acted as deniable assets. A government could float a rumor through the agency to test public opinion, and if it backfired, they could blame it on erroneous reporting. They were the unofficial mouthpieces of the great empires, insulated from the law by the very people who wrote the laws. But the passive accumulation of wealth wasn't enough. In 1870, the Ring proved it could do something far more dangerous. It could engineer a war. Let's look at the mechanics of the Ems dispatch. The year is 1870. The context is the power struggle between a fading France and a rising Prussia. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor, needs a war to unify the German states, but he cannot attack. He needs France to strike first so that Prussia looks like the victim. He needs a trigger. On July 13, 1870, King Wilhelm I of Prussia met the French ambassador in Bad Ems. The French demanded that no Prussian prince ever sit on the Spanish throne. The king politely refused. He sent a telegram to Bismarck describing the event. The text was dry, diplomatic, and utterly boring. It was a no, but a polite no. Bismarck received the telegram. He didn't have a weapon. He had a pencil. He didn't fabricate a lie. He did something more subtle. He condensed the text. He removed the diplomatic fluff. He cut out the greetings. He edited the text so that the king's refusal sounded abrupt, arrogant, and dismissive, like a slap in the face to the French ambassador. Bismarck then handed this edited text to the Wolff Bureau. Wolff, acting as the loyal arm of the Ring, instantly wired it to Havas in Paris and Reuters in London. This is where the monopoly weaponized speed. In 1800, a diplomatic insult took weeks to travel. Tempers could cool. In 1870, the Ems dispatch hit the Parisian boulevards the same evening. The French public, reading the Havas Bulletin, which came from Wolff, didn't see a diplomatic negotiation. They saw their ambassador being humiliated by a Prussian king. The text was designed to bypass the brain and hit the national ego. The streets of Paris erupted. To Berlin, the crowds screamed. The French government, backed into a corner by public hysteria, declared war 6 days later. Bismarck got his war. The Ring got their headlines. And 180,000 men died because of an edited telegram. The cartel proved that ink, when applied correctly, is more lethal than gunpowder. After the war, the Ring consolidated its power through infrastructure. The British Empire understood that whoever owns the cables owns the truth. They spent decades building the All Red Line, a massive network of underwater telegraph cables that circled the globe, touching only British territory. This gave Reuters a physical monopoly. A message from India to New York had to pass through London, and in London, Reuters sat at the switchboard. Nowhere was this manipulation more damaging than in the United States. We assume America was always a superpower, but in the late 19th century, the Ring treated the USA as a barbaric colony. Why? Because British and French bankers wanted to keep American stock prices low so they could buy assets cheaply, or they wanted to divert investment to their own colonies in India and Argentina. So, Havas and Reuters curated a specific image of America for the world. For decades, if you read a newspaper in Europe, you believed the United States was a hellscape of constant racial violence, lynching, indigenous raids, and financial fraud. The Ring deliberately amplified stories of chaos and suppressed stories of American industrial success. A train crash in Ohio was global news. The opening of a Ford factory was ignored. The Associated Press in New York was furious. They were members of the Ring, but they were treated as junior partners. They were forced to pay Reuters for news about the rest of the world, and in return, Reuters refused to tell the world the truth about America. America was an economic giant, but an information dwarf. It was gagged by the cartel. This brings us to Kent Cooper. History often paints the enemies of cartels as moral crusaders. Cooper was not a saint. He was an aggressive, ambitious capitalist who became the general manager of the Associated Press in 1925. His motivation wasn't just truth, it was power. He was tired of the AP being Reuters' cash cow. He saw that American geopolitical influence was being strangled because the world viewed the U.S. through a British lens. In his memoirs, Cooper wrote, "Roosevelt might speak, but Reuters decided how loud his voice would be." Cooper launched a corporate guerrilla war. He didn't just ask for better terms, he attacked the Ring's wallet. He began selling AP News directly to South America, violating Havas's territory. He used the new technology of the 1920s, radio, to bypass the British underwater cables. Reuters couldn't cut the wires if the news was traveling through the air. But the final blow didn't come from a business deal, it came from the law and the war. In 1941, the Nazis seized the Wolff Bureau. The German leg of the tripod was now a direct Nazi propaganda machine. The illusion of objectivity was shattered. Then, in 1945, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered the death blow in Associated Press versus United States. The court ruled that the AP's own exclusive arrangements were illegal. This legal precedent shattered the restrictive contracts that held the global cartel together. Cooper had won. The Treaty of 1870 was burned. The Ring combination is dead. But look around you. Did the system really change? Or did it just modernize? The Wolff Bureau collapsed with the Nazis, but its DNA lives on in the DPA, German press agency. Havas didn't die. It was nationalized and rebranded as AFP, Agence France Presse. Reuters is now Thomson Reuters, a multi-billion-dollar data conglomerate. The big three still exist: AP, AFP, Reuters. Today, thousands of websites, TV stations, and blogs give you the illusion of diversity. But trace the source. Look at the byline. 80% of international news still originates from these three hubs. The technology has shifted from pigeons to fiber optics, but the structure is identical. It is a funnel. The world's events are poured into the top, filtered by a few editors in London, Paris, and New York, and then dripped down to you. The Ring of 1870 proved that if you control the source, you don't need to control the reader. The reader will come to you, begging to be told what to believe. The cartel didn't disappear. It just became the default setting of our reality. Subscribe to the channel. Because investigating the invisible is the only way to see the world as it really is.